And now we're back. Thank you for being a most attentive listener so far. Now, while the night is still young, let's get back to our story, where we should learn about a manservant from a noble family and his dealings. So, let's get back to it, shall we? A Daughter of the Samurai by Etsu Inagaki Sugimoto. Chapter 1, Part 2. My home was in the old castle town of Nagaoka. Our household consisted of my father and mother, my honored grandmother, my brother, my sister, and myself. Then there was Jiya, my father's head servant, and my nurse, Ishi, besides Kin and Toshi. Several others old servants came and went on occasions. I had married sisters, all in distant homes, except the eldest, who lived about half a day's jinrikisha ride from Nagaoka. She came occasionally to visit us, and sometimes I went home with her to spend several days in her big thatched farmhouse, which had been in ancient days the fortress of three mountains. Samurai families often married into the farmer class, which was next in rank to the military, and much respected, for, as one would say, one who owns rice villages holds the life of the nation in his hand. We lived just on the edge of the town in a huge rambling house that had been added to from time to time ever since I could remember. As a result, the heavy thatched roof sagged at the gable joinings, the plaster walls had numerous jogs and patches, and the many rooms of various sizes were connected by narrow, crooked holes that twisted about in a most unexpected manner. Surrounding the house, but some distance away, was a high wall of broken boulders, topped with a low, solid fence of wood. The roof of the gateway had tipped-up corners, and patches of moss on the brown thatch. It was supported by immense posts between which swung wooden gates with ornamental iron hinges that reached halfway across the heavy boards. On each side there extended, for a short distance, a plaster wall pierced by a long, narrow window with wooden bars. The gates were always open during the day, but if at night there came knocking and the call, "Tano-mo-o! Tano-mo-o! I ask to enter!" Even in the well-known voice of a neighbor, Jiya was so loyal to old-time habit that he invariably ran to peep through one of these windows before opening the gate to the guest. From the gateway to the house was a walk of large uneven stones, in the wide cracks of which grew the first foreign flowers that I ever saw. Short-stemmed, round-headed little things that Jiya called giant's buttons. Someone had given him the seed, and as he considered no foreign flower worthy of the dignity of a place in our garden, he cunningly planted them where they would be trod upon by our disrespectful feet. But they were hardy plants, and grew as luxuriantly as moss. That our home was such a makeshift was the result of one of the tragedies of the Restoration. Echigo province was one of those that had believed in the dual government. To our people, the Mikado was too sacred to be in touch with war, or even annoying civil matters, so they fought to uphold the shogun power to which for generations their ancestors had been loyal. At which time my father was a karo, or first counselor of the Diamate of Nagaoka, a position which he had held since the age of 7, when the sudden death of my grandfather had left it vacant. Because of certain unusual circumstances, my father was the only executive in power, and thus it was that during the wars of the Restoration, he had the responsibility and the duties of the office of daimyo. At the bitterest moment that Nagaoka ever knew, Echigo found herself on the defeated side. When my mother learned that her husband's cause was lost and he taken prisoner, She sent her household to a place of safety, and then, to prevent the mansion from falling into the hands of the enemy, she with her own hands set fire to it, and from the mountainside watched it burn to the ground. After the stormy days of war were past, and father finally was free from the governorship which he had been directed to retain until the central government became stabilized, he gathered together the remains of his family estate, and after sharing with his now fish-on-land retainers, he built this temporary home on the site of his former mansion. Then he planted a mulberry grove on a few acres of land nearby and prided himself on having leveled his rank to the class of farmer. Men of samurai rank knew nothing about business. It had always been considered a disgrace for them to handle money, so the management of all business affairs was left to faithful but wholly inexperienced Jiya, while father devoted his life to reading, to memories, and introducing unwelcome ideas of progressive reform to his less advanced neighbors. My father, however, held on to one extravagance: the formal once in 2 years journey to the capital, which before the Restoration the law required of men of his position, was now changed to an informal annual trip, of which he laughingly called the window toward growing days. The name was most appropriate, for this yearly visit of my father gave his whole family a distant view of progressing Japan. Besides the wonderful word pictures, he also brought us gifts of strange, unknown things, trinkets for the servants, toys for the children, useful house articles for mother, and often rare imported things for the much-honored grandmother. Jiya always accompanied father on these trips, and in his position as business manager came in contact with tradesmen and heard many tales of the methods of foreigners in dealing with Japanese. The cleverness of the foreign business system was acknowledged by everyone, and although frequently disastrous to the Japanese, it aroused admiration and a desire to imitate. A more honest soul than Jiya never lived, but in his desire to be loyal to the interests of this much-loved master, he once got our family name into a tangle of disgrace that took months of time and much money to straighten out. Indeed, I doubt if the matter was ever clearly understood by any of the parties. I knew it was a sore puzzle to Jiya as long as he lived. It happened this way. End of Chapter 1, Part 2. I know things are getting interesting right now, but I think we should have a little pause for a moment. But rest assured, I will continue this story for you, my humble and noble listeners. So don't fret, for we will be back soon, very soon. Again, my name is Mordecai the Bard, forever at your service. Until next time.